What's up, everyone? Tera Roberts here with FantasyPros, here to give you this week's top 10 waiver wire pickups. Let's jump right into it. Number 10, Carlos Hyde. After the Travis Etienne injury, James Robinson shot up draft boards, and he seemed to be a great play in Week 1 against a weak Texans defense. And yet it was Carlos Hyde who had more carries, touches, and yards in the Jacksonville backfield. 9 carries for 44 yards, plus 2 catches for 14 yards, while James Robinson had just 5 carries and 3 catches for 49 total yards. Robinson did outsnap Hyde, but it seemed clear that Hyde was the primary rushing down back. In a pass-happy offense, it's not clear how much that's worth, but still, Hyde should at least be rostered in most leagues. Number 9, Mark Ingram. Ingram had 26 carries for 85 yards and a touchdown against the Jaguars, which is just silly. It was a positive game script for the Texans, which won't happen often, and Phillip Lindsay and David Johnson also found the end zone. But you just can't ignore 26 carries from any running back. Ingram needs to be added, but you should have zero confidence that he will actually make a major impact moving forward. Just keep expectations realistic. Number 8, Christian Kirk. Kirk had a huge game with 5 catches on 5 targets for 70 yards and 2 touchdowns, but it's still a little unclear if that's something that's going to be repeatable. He still trailed AJ Green in snaps by a wide margin, and Rondale Moore, who we will talk about in a little bit, looked explosive. Kirk should be added, but don't get too high off of Sunday's performance. There's still a lot of uncertainty within that wide receiving group. Number 7, Zach Pascal. It's clear that Pascal and Michael Pittman Jr. are the only 2 receivers worth looking at for the Colts at the moment, with T.Y. Hilton on IR and Paris Campbell taking a somewhat reduced role. Pascal played nearly all snaps against the Seahawks, turning 5 targets into 4 receptions for 43 yards and 2 scores. The Indianapolis running backs factored in heavily in Week 1, so it doesn't look like there will be an abundance of targets for Pascal, or any Colts wide receiver for that matter, but given his production in Week 1, he's worth an add. Number 6, Terrace Marshall Jr. The production wasn't fantastic against the Jets for Marshall. He played by far the fewest snaps at wide receiver among himself, DJ Moore, and Robbie Anderson, in total just 26 yards, but he saw 6 targets and had 3 catches, both of which were significantly better than Robbie Anderson. Marshall is more of a long-term play. It's unlikely that you'll want to be starting him immediately, especially next week against the Saints. But with games against the Texans and the Cowboys after that, you should add him now in case he has an unexpectedly big game and vaults up in value. Number 5, Rondale Moore. Moore played on just 29% of snaps, but he did make an impact when he was on the field, catching 4 of 5 targets for 68 yards. The great part about Moore is that he was clearly the 4th in pecking order of the Arizona wide receivers, and yet he still had a productive game. He fits perfectly with Cliff Kingsbury's offense, and with AJ Green getting up there in age, it's only a matter of time before Moore carves out an even bigger role in what looked to be an elite offense on Sunday. Number 4, Kenneth Gainwell. Gainwell had 9 carries for 37 yards and a touchdown against the Falcons, and was a distant second fiddle to Miles Sanders. But being the second fiddle is much better than being the third fiddle behind Sanders and Boston Scott, which is what most fantasy managers expected. Gainwell has the benefit of being the type of back who could see 8 to 10 touches per game, while also being an insurance policy with high upside. He should be universally rostered in nearly all leagues that are 12 teams or deeper. Number 3, Tim Patrick. Patrick has been an undervalued fantasy asset since last season, and with Jerry Jeudy's high ankle sprain, he should be on everyone's fantasy radar. Even before the industry, Patrick was playing plenty, and he caught all 4 of his targets for 39 yards and a score against the Giants. He's not a league winner, but he's someone who should be able to provide weekly flex value for the foreseeable future, and he should be considered a priority pickup. Number 2, Tony Jones Jr. Jones may not be available on waiver wires, to be fair. Latavius Murray was being drafted everywhere when he was with the Saints, and Jones is the new Latavius Murray. But we do want to highlight that if he's still available in your league, he's a clear add. It was an atypical game against the Packers, but Jones still had 11 carries for 50 yards and 1 catch for 3 yards. Like Murray, he should see 8 to 10 touches most games and carries a huge upside with him if anything happens to Alvin Kamara. He should be rostered in every league. Number 1, Elijah Mitchell. As of the filming of this video, we don't know how serious Raheem Mostert's injury is, but he was ruled out fairly quickly on Sunday's game, so he's likely to miss some time. Trey Sermon was a surprise inactive because Kyle Shanahan reportedly didn't view him as one of the top running back options on the team. And Mitchell rumbled for 104 yards and 1 touchdown on 19 carries. Mitchell may have a clear path to dominant share of the running back carries in a Shanahan offense, and if so, he becomes an every week locked-in RB2. He's a must-add player this week. And that wraps up this week's top 10 waiver wire ads. Be sure to follow and subscribe to Fantasy Pros across all platforms so you don't miss out on any of the content that we have coming up this season. And be sure to come back next week for week 2 of waiver wire ads.